The wind howled through the empty streets of New York, carrying with it a biting cold that seeped deep through the thin, tattered fabric clinging to Bella's small body. She curled her knees to her chest, trembling in the dark corner of an old brick building. Snowflakes drifted gently, settling on her messy dark brown hair and the shredded coat that once was warm, now just a flimsy layer offering no shelter from the wind. Bella's frostbitten hands clutched a torn old blanket, the only thing she had left in life. It couldn't keep her warm, but it was all she had. She curled in on herself, as if trying to disappear from the world, each hunger pang gnawing at her stomach, each gust of wind a cruel reminder that she was alive, or rather, struggling to stay that way. The city kept moving, cold and indifferent. Passersby rushed past in thick fur coats, scarves wrapped tightly around their necks, heads down against the cold. Not one noticed the little girl curled in the shadows. No one stopped, no one asked, and Bella expected nothing. Her childhood had been worn down, piece by piece, through countless freezing nights and indifferent glances. Her belief in kindness had died with the days when she still had a roof over her head. Then, amidst the silence, she heard something, a small sound, faint, like the weak sigh of another soul abandoned. Bella lifted her head, her breath forming white mist in the air. Under the flickering streetlight, she saw a shape, a dog, a German shepherd by the looks of it, curled up beside a trash bin. Its fur was matted with snow and grime, its frame gaunt, ribs clearly visible. It barely lifted its head, ears twitching as if sensing Bella's gaze, then slumped down again, motionless. Bella hesitated. She had nothing, that blanket was her last bit of warmth. But the image of that trembling creature, its half-closed eyes holding a despair too deep for words, it twisted something inside her. She knew that feeling, the feeling of being forsaken by the world. Her every movement was slow, stiff from the cold. She peeled the blanket from her body, feeling the chill creep into her bones. Crawling toward the dog, she rasped, her voice barely audible. "Hey, are you okay?" The animal didn't respond, only trembled. Gently, she laid the blanket over it, as if she were touching something sacred. It whimpered softly, brown eyes opening, and in that moment, the world's two invisible ones looked at each other. Those eyes, full of fear, abandonment, yet also a silent plea. "I'm here, do you see me?" Bella whispered, "You're not alone?" And as if it understood, the dog edged closer, leaning into Bella, seeking a shred of warmth. She shivered, but didn't push it away. For the first time in many long nights of darkness, she didn't feel entirely alone. The first light of day filtered through the snow-covered rooftops, casting a pale golden hue across the frigid street. Beneath the patchy awning of an abandoned building, Bella stirred. Her body was stiff, as though every joint had frozen overnight. But something was different. The warmth beside her remained. She turned her head and saw that Rex was still there. The large dog, its fur soaked with snow, was curled tightly next to her, the tattered blanket wrapped around them both. A faint smile crept across Bella's cracked, bloodied lips. Rex hadn't left. He had stayed, not out of instinct, but because of something more, a bond. Or perhaps simply the shared understanding between two forsaken souls. "Looks like we're stuck with each other." "Huh?" Bella murmured, her trembling hand stroking Rex's thick fur. He lifted his head, ears twitching at her voice, his deep eyes glowing with recognition. Though still gaunt, ribs protruding, there was no fear in his gaze anymore. Instead, quiet, unwavering loyalty. Bella sat up, her legs so numb she had to lift them like wooden blocks. She looked down at Rex. "We've gotta find some food," she said, nodding as if making the biggest plan of her life. Rex blinked once, then rose with a quiet shake of his coat, his tail giving a gentle wag, a companion needing no words. They set out on their journey without a map, a child and a dog, through a city full of people, yet void of care. All morning, they wandered, from subway stations to alleys behind the market. Bella's eyes scanned for forgotten trash bins or stray crumbs of bread. But the streets were too cold, and people too absorbed in their own lives. No one paused, no one spared a look of kindness. By midday, Bella's stomach twisted in knots, her vision blurred, hands frozen past feeling. Beside her, Rex walked silently, head low, sniffing the cracked pavement as though searching for hope between the stones. Eventually, They stopped near a subway entrance, where the crowd never slowed. Bella sat on the curb, arms around her knees, and drew a deep breath. In her mind, something echoed, music. Once, when she had a roof overhead, Bella loved to sing. Her voice used to be clear, bright like a spring morning. But since her world had collapsed, she hadn't dared let it out until now. There was no stage, no spotlight, just dirty concrete walls and bone-deep cold. But Bella sang, a sorrowful melody, aching, like her own heart, fractured but still alive. Her voice was raspy, worn, but each note carried truth, the raw truth of a child with no one left to lean on. Her song echoed down the street, fragile, but unyielding. Rex didn't sit idly. He stood close to her, head high, ears alert. Whenever someone came too near, he wagged his tail or gave a soft bark, not aggressive, just enough to catch their attention. A man in a dark suit paused, his expression uncertain. He fumbled in his pocket, then dropped a few coins by Bella's side. A woman in a fur coat lingered longer, knelt to pet Rex. "He's a beautiful boy," she whispered, then handed Bella a $5 bill. Bella stared wide-eyed at the money in her hand, tears spilling over, not because of the amount, but because for the first time in months of cold silence, someone had seen her, someone had heard her voice. Rex gently nudged her hand, as if to say, "Keep going, I'm here." Bella smiled. Beneath the gray sky, among the lingering snow, her song rose again, fragile, yet beautiful. And beside her, Rex, her only friend, stood firm, ready to face the world by her side. The sun had begun to sink behind the towering skyline of New York, painting the sky in hues of amber and fading gold. Bella sat against the wall near the subway entrance, with Rex nestled tightly beside her, his head resting on her lap like a living, breathing pillow of warmth. In the pocket of her worn coat were a few coins and a crisp $5 bill, the greatest treasure she had collected in weeks. They had shared a small meal, half a sandwich and some dog food Bella had carefully salvaged from the bin behind a pet store. It wasn't good, it wasn't enough, but compared to the nights spent writhing in hunger, today felt like a miracle. She reached down and stroked Rex's neck gently. "You're the reason people even see me. You know that?" she whispered. Rex didn't respond, he simply wagged his tail faintly, his deep brown eyes tracking the shadows of passersby. And then, he froze. A soft growl rumbled in Rex's throat, low and measured, not threatening, but sharp enough to catch Bella's attention. "What is it?" she asked, following his gaze. Across the street, just a few meters away, was a small cafe. Under the golden glow of the window, a woman stood. Her silver hair was tied in a neat bun, her long coat flowing, and her eyes, sharp, observant, held something gentle beneath them, as though she didn't entirely belong to the hurried world around her. She was looking at them. Not a glance, not the passing gaze of strangers, but something deeper, longer, and contemplative. Bella felt a pang in her chest. Not from fear, but from instinct. A street-honed sense, shaped by countless cold nights, told her this wasn't just another look. Rex stopped growling, but he didn't look away. His ears were perked, his breath slowed. He sensed it too. Something was unfolding. Bella turned her head, trying to ignore it. Maybe it was just another curious onlooker. Maybe it was pity. She had seen plenty of those. But deep down, she knew, this was different. Minutes passed. When Bella looked again, the woman was gone. The cafe door hung ajar, but her figure had vanished into the city's shadows. "She's gone," Bella murmured. Rex lifted his head and sniffed the air, verifying what she said. Then he lay back down, as if confirming, yes, something had begun to shift. Bella rose, tucking the coins into her pocket and tightening the scarf around her neck. "Come on, Rex, it's gonna get colder." Two small figures, one girl, one dog, melted into the thinning crowd on the sidewalk. They passed tall buildings, overflowing trash bins, and eventually returned to their usual alley, the one sheltered by a rusted tin roof and layered cardboard boxes. Bella didn't know yet that those eyes would return, that this ordinary evening would be the first step into a different chapter. But Rex knew. Somehow, through instinct or some distant memory, he sensed that something was drawing closer. And for the first time in many days of running, Bella wasn't afraid. There was only a strange stillness, like the silence before a storm. Or perhaps, the stillness before hope arrives. The night fell like a heavy black curtain, blanketing the narrow and frigid alleys of New York. The dim street lights weren't enough to illuminate the corners where evil often lurked. Bella pulled her collar up higher, walking faster, her hand gripping Rex's leash tightly as their footsteps echoed on the freezing concrete. Today was okay, she whispered to Rex, trying to reassure herself. We got food, some money, and I've got you. Rex walked close to her, his shaggy fur shifting gently with every movement, ears upright like living radars, constantly scanning even the faintest of sounds. Ever since their strange encounter with the silver-haired woman that afternoon, he hadn't fully relaxed. As they turned into the familiar alley, the one with the rusty tin roof, a few cardboard boxes, and a patch of wall good enough to block the wind, Bella suddenly stopped in her tracks. She heard something. Footsteps. Not one, three, maybe four people, coming up behind them. Rex halted. Two. A low growl rumbled from his throat, a warning before the storm. Bella turned around, and in the flickering light of a broken street lamp, three figures emerged from the shadows. They were young, maybe in their 20s, but their eyes carried a hunger, exhaustion, and recklessness, the kind of look Bella knew too well, the kind that had nothing left to lose. Well, what do we have here? A cute little girl, and a dog. One sneered, his voice rough and raspy. Bella tightened her grip on the leash. I have nothing, please go away. Oh, but you do. We saw you singing this morning. People were throwing you money. Weren't they? The tallest one stepped forward, his smirk sharp like a blade. Rex moved ahead, placing himself squarely between Bella and them, his growl now louder, threatening. The second man lifted his leg, ready to kick Rex. Get out of the way. Mutt. In a flash, Rex lunged, like a gray shadow, his razor-sharp teeth clamped onto the man's arm. A scream tore through the stillness. The third guy panicked, pulling out a small knife from his pocket. Back off. Bella shouted, her voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. I'll call the cops. Blood dripped from the bitten man's arm, splattering on the cement. He staggered back, yelling to the others, "That's enough. Let's go." The three of them scrambled into the darkness, their retreating footsteps pounding like a furious storm. Their silhouettes vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Bella collapsed to her knees. Rex. She wrapped her arms around his neck, trembling as she checked him for injuries. A long gash was visible along his right flank, where the knife had struck just before they fled. No, 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 she repeated like a prayer, tears spilling down her face, soaking into his blood-stained fur. But Rex was breathing, strong, steady. He licked her cheek, gently, as if to say, I'm okay. Under the freezing night sky, Bella held Rex tightly, sobbing. She had nothing, no home, no parents, no one by her side. But she had Rex, and that alone was her entire world. She didn't know what to do next. But in that moment, with her arms wrapped around her four-legged friend, she understood something more clearly than ever before. Rex had chosen to stay, chosen to fight for her, and she would not let that choice be in vain. The wind swept through every crevice of the city as if it, too, understood what had just happened. Bella trembled as she stepped out of the alley, holding Rex tightly in her arms. Blood from his wound was still seeping through the thin fabric. But he didn't whimper, didn't cry, he only panted, eyes open, following her every step. The stabbing pain in Bella's chest wasn't just from the cold, it was the helplessness tightening around her heart. She didn't know where to go. No money, no medicine, no one to call. And Rex was bleeding. Headlights flashed by, distant horns echoed, and the world continued spinning in its indifferent rhythm. She looked around, shops were closed. Diners dimmed their lights. No one stopped. Then, a voice came from behind. Bella. She turned, startled. That figure, the woman in the long brown coat, eyes sharp enough to pierce the night, stood just a few steps away. It was her, the one who had seen her sing, the one who'd handed her a business card she had tossed away after leaving the park. Afraid it was just another beautiful lie, Bella instinctively backed away, clutching Rex tighter. I don't need anything, she whispered. The woman didn't move. Rex is hurt. Bella tightened her grip on the strap, eyes full of suspicion. You know his name? A beat of silence. Then the woman nodded. I used to train dogs. Hundreds of them. But I never forget that look. That loyalty. I couldn't be mistaken. Bella looked down at Rex. Then back at the woman. I won't let anyone take him away. I didn't come to take him back. The woman said gently. I came to help you both. Those words, simple, yet so hard to trust, made Bella waver. She was too used to sweet traps and promises that never became real. But this time, the woman didn't step closer. Didn't pressure her. She just stood there, beneath the dim streetlight, as if waiting for trust to be given. Not taken. Rex let out a soft whine, nudging her heart toward a decision. Is there a vet? Bella asked, voice no louder than the wind. The woman nodded immediately. Yes, in my car. My animal clinic is open all night. We don't have much time. Bella trembled, from the cold, from fear, from a fragile hope she didn't dare believe was real. But then she nodded, slowly, cautiously, when the woman opened the door of the black SUV parked at the curb. The backseat had already been prepared, a large cushion, a medical kit, warm towels, and a thermal water bottle. Bella froze again. Everything was ready, as if the woman had known they would come. Who are you? She whispered. The woman simply smiled. Call me Margaret, and I believe this is only the beginning of the journey for you, and for Rex. Bella bent down and gently laid Rex into the car. He was breathing heavily, but still managed to lick her hand as if to say, it's okay, just trust. She sat beside him, her hand never leaving his warm fur. And as the car quietly pulled away from the corner, heading into the darkness of New York, Bella didn't know what awaited them next, but for the first time in years, she dared to hope that maybe they weren't alone anymore. The sky had begun to brighten as the car glided through the quiet suburban streets. Bella sat silently, her arms wrapped around Rex's trembling body. The cold still lingered in her chest, but she no longer noticed. Her focus was fixed on each of Rex's shallow breaths, on the wound at his side, now temporarily bandaged. Beside her, Margaret maintained a respectful silence, no questions, no pressure, only an occasional glance through the rearview mirror. Her eyes gentle, like someone who had once known the world from its darkest depths. The car turned onto a gravel road that wound gently up a hill covered in soft grass. And then, in the golden light of early morning, a simple white house emerged, nestled in the middle of a vast field, so beautiful it felt to Bella like she had stumbled into a dream. The house wasn't large, but every detail radiated warmth. Windows opened to wildflower gardens. A wooden porch stretched wide with old rocking chairs. And behind it, a spacious kennel where dogs of every breed and color ran freely in a peace that seemed almost surreal. From the chimney, smoke rose lazily, like a silent invitation. Margaret carefully lifted Rex from the car, cradling him as if he were sacred. A middle-aged veterinarian was already waiting, no questions, no surprise. He simply nodded at Bella and carried Rex into a small clinic beside the kennels. Bella instinctively tried to follow, but Margaret placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Let them care for Rex. You need to rest for a bit, she said, not as a command, but as a mother's whisper from the heart. Bella wasn't used to kindness, but the woman's eyes, they didn't lie. She was guided into the warm kitchen, where a sturdy wooden table had already been set with hot tea, toasted bread, and chicken soup. The aroma filled the space, awakening something long dormant inside her, the feeling of being cared for. Bella sat down, still tense. Why are you doing all this for me? She asked, her eyes fixed on the window, where Rex's silhouette had just disappeared behind the door. Margaret set down her teacup and took the seat across from her. Because you remind me of myself, when I was your age. Lost, guarded, convinced the world only knew how to take. But then a dog, just one dog, changed my life. Bella said nothing, but she looked at her. Rex isn't a miracle, Margaret continued, but the love you give him, that is. And someone with a heart like that deserves a chance. Moments later, the door opened. The veterinarian stepped in and gave a small nod. He's going to be fine. Rex will need a few days to recover. The wound was deep, but not dangerous. Bella jumped to her feet. Can I see him? He's sleeping, but you can sit beside him. The medical room sat behind the kennel area. Bella entered a space filled with soft light and calm. Rex lay on a large cushion, bandages wrapped around his belly, breathing steadily. As she approached, his ears twitched, and his eyes opened lazily. Then, his tail gave a slow wag. "You're such an idiot. You know that?" she whispered, pressing her hand to his head. "I told you not to do anything stupid. But thank you. Thank you for still being here." Margaret stood quietly behind her, then spoke. "You and Rex can stay here. As long as you like. No strains. But if you want, I can teach you how to work with dogs, how to read them, how to train them, and in return, you'll have a future." Bella turned around. Her eyes no longer held suspicion, but something cracked open, like the first layer of ice melting on an early spring morning. "I don't know anything about the future," she said. "None of us do." Margaret smiled. "But you have Rex. And now, you don't have to face it alone." Bella turned back to Rex. He lay there still, steady like a small stone in the middle of a storm. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Bella felt that this place, it wasn't just a shelter. It was a beginning. The first day began in silence. Not the tense kind found on city streets, but a strange, peaceful quiet, filled only with the soft rustle of wind through the trees and the distant barking of dogs from the training yard behind the farm. Bella stood on the wooden porch, hand resting on the railing, eyes following the movements of the dogs being trained far off in the field. Beside her, Rex, now bandaged anew, lay quietly, his head resting on her leg as if he too were watching the future unfold for the both of them. Margaret appeared behind her, handing Bella a small notebook and a ballpoint pen. "It all starts with observation. Write down everything you see, body language, reactions, what makes a dog happy and what makes it hesitate." Bella flipped open the notebook. The first page was pristine. She'd never imagined writing anything about dogs. But as her eyes followed a Labrador being rehabilitated after an injury, she realized something: the gentleness of the trainer, the trust in the dog's eyes. Each slow but determined step, all of it spoke volumes. That entire day, Bella shadowed Margaret. There were no theory classes, no desks, just side-by-side work, observing, cleaning, feeding, speaking to the dogs in calm, low tones to build connection. Bella was surprised to find that Margaret never raised her voice, never issued commands. She guided. Every instruction was an invitation, every glance a way of understanding. "You don't need to force a dog to obey," Margaret said. "You just need to show them you're worth trusting." And Bella understood. That's what Rex had done with her. No demands, no expectations, just presence, waiting, stepping forward quietly when she needed him. That was how a dog had made a homeless child smile in the dead of winter. At noon, Bella was taken to the specialized training pen for working dogs. There, she met a pair of border collies being trained to search for victims in simulated disaster zones. It was a unique drill, full of jarring noises, artificial smoke, and sudden obstacles. She stood frozen, watching the dogs push through the smoke, crawl through narrow tunnels, sniff through chaos, and finally signal when they located a dummy designed to mimic a trapped person. "They're not good because of instinct," Margaret said. "They're good because they trust their handler." Bella clutched the notebook tighter. That night, when she wrote down what she'd seen, she didn't just record the lesson. She began to document a feeling. The feeling of watching a dog give everything it had to find someone buried in rubble. The feeling of being trusted, for the first time in her life, to touch the future. A week passed. Rex had almost fully recovered. But more importantly, in the eyes of the staff at the training center, Bella was also changing. She no longer avoided eye contact, no longer flinched when someone placed a hand on her shoulder. Now, she was the tousled-haired girl often seen sitting near the grassy yard, whispering to the shy, newly arrived dogs. "She has something you can't teach," Margaret said to another trainer. "She knows how to be silent at the right time. And she knows how to love with her eyes." Without saying a word, that evening, as Bella and Rex sat on the porch, the breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass and toasted bread from the kitchen, Margaret approached and placed a slim folder on the table. "Would you like to study officially?" she asked. Bella looked up, eyes wide. "A formal course. Certified professional dog trainer. If you want it, I'll sponsor you." Bella glanced down at Rex. The faithful dog rested his chin on her leg, amber eyes reflecting the golden glow of the porch light. She didn't answer, but she smiled, and that was the most beautiful answer of all. The first test came sooner than Bella expected. On a biting cold Saturday morning, she was called to the main training yard. Before her stood a complex obstacle course, artificial smoke, recorded screams and sirens, sudden falling debris, and flickering emergency lights. This was the regular assessment for service dogs, but today, Bella wasn't just an observer. She was the handler, and Rex was her partner. "No one is forcing you to do this," Margaret said gently, placing a hand on Bella's shoulder. "But if you want to be a real trainer, you need to learn how to steady yourself when the world around you is chaos." Bella didn't answer. She simply knelt down, clipped the leash to Rex's harness, and met his eyes for a brief, wordless moment. It wasn't a command, it was an agreement. The whistle blew. The entire yard shook. Loud explosions rang out. White smoke poured from the vents. Bella led Rex into the maze of noise, light, and simulated hazards. The dog stopped for a split second, glancing back at her as if to ask, "You're still coming?" Bella nodded. "Let's go, my friend." They stepped in. The test lasted less than 15 minutes, but to Bella, it felt like a lifetime. Within the dense smoke, Rex suddenly froze before a pile of collapsed wooden crates. Bella couldn't see a thing, but she'd learned one rule: trust the instincts of the four-legged friend beside her. "Check," she shouted, executing the proper protocol, signaling a detection. A trainer in the distance stopped the clock. A voice boomed from the loudspeaker, "Confirmed. Target correctly located." No one saw the small hands trembling inside Bella's thick gloves. But when Rex came over and pressed his head against her leg, her whole body slumped, not from exhaustion, but from a deep, relieved pride. The test was over, and Bella, in her mud-splattered clothes and with cold sweat on her brow, stood tall among the circle of adults, receiving her first look of recognition, not for her backstory, but for her skill. That afternoon, as she and Rex were walking back to the small wooden cabin on the edge of the farm, Margaret called out to her. "There's something," she said, "a task, and I think you're the right one for it." Bella tilted her head. Since when had she, a child who used to sleep under a bridge, been the right one for anything? "Do you remember the missing person case near the old train station?" Margaret asked. "The police are looking for a little boy lost in an abandoned warehouse. They need a dog with scent experience, and a handler who won't scare the child." Bella understood immediately. Someone who had once been that child. When they arrived at the scene, yellow floodlights cast long shadows against the crumbling walls. The officers looked at Bella with skepticism, but Margaret simply said, "Let them try." Rex entered the warehouse first, nose to the ground, tracking along the trail. Bella walked close behind, silent, her hand resting on Rex's back like a silent assurance. "His name is Dylan," an officer whispered. 4 years old. Just overnight, Bella, the quiet girl of the town, had become a name spreading across social media. The video capturing 6 dogs leaping into the lake to save a child was shared millions of times. But what surprised people even more was not just the bravery of the dogs, but the image of the small girl with tangled hair, calmly holding the paw of a drenched dog as if she were holding onto her very own heart. The next morning, the news outlets began knocking. Reporters crowded the gate of Mrs. Margaret's house. Cameras, microphones, questions. Who is that little girl? How could a child train 6 dogs like that? Is it true that Rex was once a missing canine dog, as rumored? Bella sat behind the curtain, her eyes following the crowd but showing no fear. Just quiet. Rex lay beside her, his head resting on her leg, breathing steadily. She placed her hand on his back and, in the chaos outside, whispered, "They're not going to take you away from me, right?" Margaret walked in. Her eyes met Bella's. No words needed. She just nodded, a small but firm nod. "We will tell the truth. And we will not back down." The press conference was held right at the training center. Behind them was a banner that read, "Not just dogs, but family." Margaret stood in the center of the courtyard, her voice unwavering. "The girl's name is Bella. She didn't just save a life, she saved a soul that had once been deeply wounded, Rex." A reporter called out loudly, "Is it true that Rex was a canine dog stolen from the unit years ago? And if so, will the girl be forced to give him back?" Margaret didn't flinch. "We've verified it. Rex was a service dog from the city's rescue unit. He went missing during a transport accident. His former handler had passed away. For nearly 3 years, no one found him, until Bella rescued him, in the middle of winter." The courtyard fell silent. Margaret stepped aside. If anyone has the right to speak today, it's her. Bella stepped out, small in her gray sweater. 6 dogs followed her, lining up right behind. When she stopped, all 6 stopped, like a silent army. Bella looked at the crowd, the cameras, and then bowed. I'm not good at talking, she began, her voice as soft as breath. But I know how to listen. And Rex has listened to me since day one. She turned to the dog. Back then, Rex had no one, just like me. We found each other. And since then, we've never been apart. Grown-ups talk about responsibility, about the law. But if anyone saw Rex jump into the water to save a life, if you looked into his eyes at that moment, you'd understand. Love doesn't need paperwork. It only needs loyalty. A female reporter wiped away tears. A man in a neat suit stood up. He was the officer in charge of the missing K9 files. He walked into the courtyard, looked at Bella, then knelt down and placed his hand on Rex's head. Welcome back, Rex. But from now on, your orders come from this little girl's heart. The whole courtyard erupted in applause. Bella stood there in awe. Rex took a deep breath, closed his eyes as if he understood. And for the first time in many years, Bella smiled, truly smiled. That night, the press replayed the entire press conference. Headlines blared. The girl and her rescue dogs, when love overrules the law. Rex, the lost dog and his new little handler. From the streets to legend, a story of loyalty. But for Bella, she didn't care how many people watched the clip. She didn't need anyone to call her a hero. She only knew that when the lights went out, when the room returned to silence, 6 familiar breaths still surrounded her. And Rex still lay right by her bedside. Loyal, unshaken. Tomorrow would bring a new challenge. But tonight, she simply whispered, "Thank you for never leaving me." A month after the groundbreaking press conference, the small town where Bella and Rex lived had become a symbol. No longer a quiet place with snow-covered streets. It was now spoken of with 2 words, a miracle. And in that very warmth, a special ceremony was held, honoring the voiceless heroes. A stage was set right in the center of the town park. Thin layers of frost still lingered on the grass, but the seats had been filled since early morning. Children held up signs that read, "Bella and Rex, heroes." Adults wore T-shirts printed with the 6 dogs. And behind the curtain, Bella stood in silence, her hands clenched tightly. Margaret leaned down and adjusted the girl's sweater. "Are you ready, dear?" Bella looked up. She didn't answer. She just nodded. On stage, the town's mayor, a silver-haired man with a warm voice, stepped out to thunderous applause. "Today, we're not just honoring a courageous act," he said, "but something far beyond training, loyalty, love, and rebirth." He turned toward the curtain. "Please welcome young Bella and her team, 6 dogs. Led by Rex." The crowd erupted in applause. Bella stepped forward. No one had ever taught her how to walk through a crowd. No one had ever shown her how to face hundreds of gazes. But she did it, not for herself, but because Rex was walking right beside her. The 6 dogs appeared in formation. No one had trained them to do that. But their footsteps were in perfect rhythm. Like a silent symphony. Only the quiet beating hearts kept time. Bella approached the microphone. Her heart pounded. Lights glared. The space fell utterly silent. She closed her eyes, took a breath, then opened them, and called out, "Rex." The dog immediately turned around. Standing tall, eyes sharp, but gaze gentle. She raised her hand. "Sit." Rex sat. "Roll." Rex rolled. "Stop." Rex froze. No one made a sound. Because they knew, what they were witnessing wasn't a performance. It was memory. It was emotion. It was the invisible thread that had pulled a little girl from the edge, and anchored a soul once thought lost. Bella held the microphone, her voice small but steady. "Rex isn't just my dog. He's my first friend, my last family, the reason I didn't disappear from this world." Her eyes welled up, but no tears fell. "I never hoped to be someone special. I just hope no one ever has to feel the loneliness Rex and I once felt. And if someone out there is looking for a hand to hold, I hope they find their own, Rex." The crowd exploded. Not because of skill, not for a title, but for truth. Because the first name she spoke after years of silence was that of a dog. After the ceremony, a small statue was built right in the park. It depicted a girl with long flowing hair, resting her hand on the head of the dog standing beside her. On the pedestal, a simple inscription: Bella and Rex, souls that never left each other. And every winter, when snow blanketed the sky, people would still see a girl reading a book beneath the statue, with a quiet dog beside her. No need for anyone to notice. Because only one thing mattered. Rex was still there.